JB here. September 19th, 2023. Hope everybody's doing outstanding. Just going to talk really quick. I haven't been on in the last 2 weeks or so. Lots of chop. Not much to really talk about. We've had some positive data. Markets sell off. Then we have bad data. Markets rally. Then last week we actually had some decent data. And it's been back and forth. Tomorrow's the big day. We have the Fed. Outside of a rate hike or a rate cut, the market should probably receive it pretty well. Then it's going to be how does Powell spin the recent data? Are they going to raise rates before the year's out? There's only two more meetings. One in I think one's November, one's December, and I think it's the first week of November, and then it's more towards the end of December. For now, I think they're just going to kind of paint a picture that maybe no more hikes to end the year, and see how that all plays out. We have, let's see here. Earnings season starts the middle of October, so it's kind of a lull. We've got pretty much all the data, the CPI data, the PPI data came out, retail sales numbers, missed estimates on Thursday. And then the big surprising number was it 3 weeks ago, 2 weeks ago, the JOLTS number. So it was pretty much the job openings declined at the biggest clip in, I guess, since the data has been reported, which you would think bodes well for the Fed, saying, wow, pretty much the Fed is trying to induce a recession, so that would be good. But then you start having this other data conflicting. So we'll have to see how this all plays out. I've been putting on to watch this the last couple days and last week. The IWM, the small caps, it's kind of a little nerve-wracking here. I went and got some IWM puts today, finally, just more of somewhat as a hedge, but also to protect from more, if it continues to break under this 200-day moving average. It's at 182.45 is the 200, broke through that this morning. And not to say that I don't put my bear suit on, but I think there might be an opportunity for a little more downside before we start to rally. Also, I put on some post on Twitter. I think it was Ryan Dietrich around the historically bad. The last 2 weeks in September and the first week October historically are underperformed. The market underperforms pretty much. Let's see what I have here. Starting September 20th, if you go back to 1950 and you average these days, September 20th, 21st, 22nd, all the way up to September 30th are pretty much all negative except for September 28th on average since 1950. So historically speaking, it's a weak seasonality, I guess you would call it. So you couple that with the Fed and the market kind of chopping around. At some point, it's going to find a little direction, and I hate to paint the picture where we have a massive pull, but maybe we get down to mid to low 430s on the SPY. At same token, I don't want to jettison some of my positions I'm in. Not that I'm in too many longer term positions, but Weight Watchers, VKTX. So just want to have a little bit of a hedge to protect from downside or make money on downside. So got those IWM puts this morning. I was actually looking at TZA calls, but IWM has more liquidity, so easier to get in and out, where TZA, the spreads are a little tough, and if the market moves quick, I don't want to be stuck having to sell it to bid and have to chase it, as opposed to IWM where there's a lot more liquidity. So that was kind of thought process on getting those IWM puts. So first I'll talk. Let's see. I run out of breath quick here. So Weight Watchers, nothing has really changed on this story. Had a great move last week on no news. Then it's been turning around. Now it's sitting here right around 1094 or so. News this morning, Abbott and Weight Watchers launched a new connected app. If you don't know Abbott, they have those diabetes glucose monitors. So to think of Weight Watchers as a program that's part of Weight Health, which is what they're trending towards, as opposed to just weight. I mean, your health as opposed to just being your weight. Diabetes is one of those things that are not going away. So I think that's great news. Now you talk about these other partnerships. You have a board of directors that came from Humana, who's the chief medical officer. Then tomorrow we have Oprah Winfrey. She'll be on at 4 o'clock. I don't know if it's on her show, but she posted on her website, and she's going to be on with the CEO of Weight Watchers, and she's going to talk about Ozempic and Wegovy and all these other GLP-1 solutions and how to fit it into your lifestyle and how that works. And she has a pretty big audience. So if she can give this kind of positive description of these drugs that are helpful, because I think there's a lot of misnomers out there and the perception that people think drugs is not, you want to be taking drugs to lose weight, but I think she's able to put a positive spin. Only going to bode well for Weight Watchers. Then you have some FOMO. People are going to say, wow, she's still on the board of directors. She still has a large stake in Weight Watchers. Maybe you start to get some FOMO, 12, 13, 14 bucks, so on and so forth. So that's kind of the thought process, or continues to be the thought process on Weight Watchers. Not going to add anything until maybe it starts to really show some more strength, maybe once it breaks 12.50 or 13 bucks. So that's Weight Watchers. VKTX just disappointing. They're going to have their data, phase 2 data on their pill solution for their, I forget the exact letters, VK2435 or whatever is their phase 2 study. Right now, there's no oral solution for GLP-1. There's a couple in phase 3 studies, but if VKTX comes out with more positive data and has an oral solution possibly on the horizon, have to think the thing goes back over 20, 25, maybe even 30, and it just increases the odds of some kind of acquisition or buyout. So nothing has really changed in the story, besides the stock has closed down 6 straight days in a row. It's in the red right now, but hopefully find some support, head back up to 15, 16 into the end of the week. Excuse me, folks. Intuitive Surgical. So it's actually starting to show a bid here, but yesterday, right at the open, it gapped higher, started to move, strong volume, and it had almost looked like a similar setup to what happened in the middle of August when it ran from 280 all the way up to 320 in a matter of 3 sessions. Not saying that's the exact scenario that's going to play out here, but it almost looks like the company is doing some kind of accelerated buyback, which could explain some of the move. And I think the stock has been unfairly beaten up. Again, that GLP-1 craze has affected a lot of these stocks out there. Some folks are saying Intuitive Surgical has been hurt because they think when people are not obese, they don't need surgeries. So the demand for surgeries and the volume of surgeries will decline. And because of that, Intuitive Surgical, 6, 12 months, 18 months from now, will finally start showing a decline in procedures and surgical and their Da Vinci robot sales and things like that. I don't know if that's the case. I think that's still too early to kind of figure that out. And I talked about this the last time I was on audio. You also have to think the flip side. You have people who are more physically fit. They're going to do more activities. They're going to play pickleball, tennis. They're going to have injuries. So maybe it's going to actually increase the amount of surgeries and procedures that Intuitive Surgical devices do across all the hospitals in the world. So that's kind of two sides to look at it. And the company, I think it has $8 billion in cash now. Just a well-positioned, great fundamental story. So unfortunately, all the way up, I think it hit 303.80 yesterday. Sold off all the way down to 295 this morning, starting to bounce here. 303.80. So hopefully back into the 301, 302 range before the close. Or, of course, I would love it to be higher. And then gets to 305 by tomorrow, or 306. The 310s will be back to life in a big way. So that's kind of the thought process there on Intuitive Surgical. Excuse me, I get out of breath soon, more quickly than I used to because I go on these rants and I don't breathe. GNRC, just such a disappointing trade the last 2 weeks. This is another name. I mean, if you know their products and what's going on in terms of needs for backup power and generators and things like that, it's only increasing. And not only that, as it becomes more available, people just do it as a feature to your home, things like that. So then you start to mix in all these disasters where you have hurricanes, power outages, fires, things that California's had rolling blackouts at times. Here's a great product that I think fits that niche, and for some reason it just can't get its footing. Hit the lower Bollinger Band yesterday, bounced, is right back at it again today. Got all the way up to 112 in the morning, faded all the way down to 108. I think at some point, and maybe it's going to need a kick in the butt, maybe some analyst upgrade or something to that effect tomorrow or Thursday to get back into the mid to high 115, 117 in the next day or two, and then I would love to see it over 120. But going to need a big move here for my calls. So that's the thought process there on GNRC, but just a great story. Excuse me. I'm trying to think of some of the other names. Take a look. I haven't mentioned Roku in a couple of days because there's not really much to talk about. But here's another name. It's down 7, 8. Is it 7 or 8 days? 6 days in a row. The stock is down. So just that, and this is on the heels of them raising their revenue guidance and announcing some cuts, right? So everybody, the bears who don't like Roku, don't understand Roku, are talk about it being a margin story or revenue story. And here Roku answered more of those concerns by cutting costs and raising their revenue guidance. You would think it would be into the mid 90s, $100, which it did trade up to almost, I think it was 95 that day when I had the calls and sold most of them. But interesting. We'll have to see how this all plays out. Let's see if I have my chart on Roku. But it's $70 and it's right at the lower Bollinger Band too. 72.73 is the lower Bollinger Band. It's trading at 72.54. I have to think it's gonna be a snap bounce at some point. Yeah. So that's a name I'm always looking at. Let's see, at Roku. Sorry, folks. Yeah, and then two other names I was looking at in Wix. So Wix still has the Starboard activist stake in the name, and that's from a while back. I think the stock was in the low 70s when that happened. And then it had an upgrade. Let's see if I can pull up when it was upgraded. JMP reiterated $130 price target benchmark, buy rating. My thoughts on Wix. If Wix used to be one of my top 5 stocks. I don't know, it was 3 or 4 or 5 or maybe even longer than that years ago. The environment for Wix hasn't changed much. If anything, it's grown. The fact that they now accept their integrated e-commerce platform now, Stripe, all the payment options. And then I used to always talk about Wix because the first thing with Wix is when you're a customer and you sign up, unless you have a pizza restaurant and you want to make a storefront for it, you either someone sets it up for you, pay them to do it, or you do it yourself, which is very easy to do. And then you put it up, and now you have customers going to it. But if you want to change from Wix to somewhere else, you can't take that website and port it to GoDaddy or some other host or some other provider. Yeah, you have to start from scratch because Wix, it's all proprietary software. So it's not like you just download it and reinstall it somewhere else. So it's kind of their moat around their business. So that helps keep their customers in place without, if they raise price a little bit, they don't just jump ship. And then they have a huge free cohort. They have, I don't know how many it is now, but it seems every year they're able to convert 5 or 6% of those existing freemium members, they call them, right? So surprising is still down here. I think there was rumors of an acquisition, or the Starboard position was activist. Anyway, at some point I'll look to re-enter. It's just been chopping around since I had it on the watch list a week and a half ago between 97.50 and 92.50. So all that does is kill premiums. So that's Wix. I'm trying to think of the other ones that I had here on the watch list. So let me just talk about ULTA and LULU, right? So both, I talked about LULU 2 weeks ago, right before the earnings, and they posted a great earnings report, right? The beat and raise. Stock went from 380 all the way up to 410, and then ever since then it's just been melting. And so 410, how many days in a row? 6 of the past 8 sessions to the downside. A big move on yesterday, the big sell-off when I added the puts, and here it is just chopping right around its 50-day moving average. 382.81 is its 50-day moving average right now. Let's see if I have that up here. 383.32. Got all the way down to 379. But it's a great story. And some of these stories, doesn't matter how great the story is, it matters what the macro environment's doing. And I think right now with some of these specialty retailers, especially the higher end, they're under pressure not because of their core business, not their fundamentals, but because of what's going on overall. The talks of restarting the student loans is going to hurt some of these retailers, especially in the fashion and cosmetic sector. Who knows? But you take a look at some of these charts, and Lulu's another great ULTA's another great example. Here's a company, another 2 quarters of back-to-back beats and raises, and the stock just can't find its footing. So when we have a possibility of maybe a little more further downside this week, I think those are great plays to at least play some lottos for downside. And it's funny, I go look on ULTA, and I don't watch CNBC much, if at all. I used to watch it 10 years ago, but I don't watch too much. But Carter Worth is the chartician, whatever you call him, the market, the technical person. He now has his own site. It's called, what's it called? Worth Stocks or something like that. But what does he talk about on Fast Money last night? He talks about being short ULTA. So something he's done that a couple of times where I'll talk about something or post in a watch list or whatever, and then the next day he puts it, that afternoon it's on Fast Money. So yeah. So what does it do? Of course, it goes up to 412. It hit actually 405 at the open, 412 at 11 o'clock. Now it's down here at 408. I put it on the watch. I think it's 402 is the lows. If you take a look at the ULTA chart, it got all the way down to 402 in June. I think it was June. Let's see. Yeah, right at the start of June, 402 was the lows, and then it rallied from 402 up to 490, melted back. I think it was 430 or so when it reported earnings. But again, another monster beat and raise, and the stock just doesn't do well. And usually there's something else going on than just the company. So probably it's pricing in more weakness in the consumer, at least in the consumer, in the area, folks who traditionally shop those stores and companies. And that's probably, have to think that's what the case is. So if that is the case, I think there's more downside, especially ULTA. Maybe it gets down to 370, 380. And then you take a LULU. I thought LULU was going to go down to 360 in the coming days. But it's obviously it's taking its time today, still holding on flat. It's like up, barely up. It's up 49 cents. I'm trying to think of some other things I was, some of the other names. Look, Cardlytics. Disappointing. I mean, here's a name, and I've talked about Cardlytics because it was another one of my top 5 stocks a long time ago. And the stock went up to 130, 140. Maybe went higher than that. I'd have to go back and look. But a great story. And then it just sold off, continued to have weak guidance. You had COVID concerns around that, just destroyed the stock because the big part of their business that they have to worry about restaurants, brick and mortar, and then they have to worry about travel. And those two areas just got destroyed. And that's their bread and butter. So rightfully so, their revenues, margin, all that declined. They were just burning through cash. And then finally, it seems like they found a bottom. You take a look in spring. I think the stock was trading at $4, and it just went on a massive run. Almost hit, I think it was $19 on Friday. But definitely a name I'll be watching for earnings this coming week. I mean, in the coming weeks and months when earnings start to kick off. You have Cart IPO. Did that go out yet? Let's see. It was pricing at 41. Nope, it's at 42.20. Instacart. And surprising, you would think as the pricing for Cart goes up, you would think Dash would rally with Instacart. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know the fundamentals too much of Instacart. I haven't looked at their S1, and I haven't read too much into it, so I don't know how it compares with Dash. But I think they're going to be over 10 billion. And what's Dash at? I don't know what their valuation is. Dash. Oh, Dash is 31 billion. And they trade 4 times revenues, 13% short interest. Interesting. Oh, Tilray, right? So I guess I'll just go on a quick rant on that, and then I'll get off. And SPY's going to test 440 here shortly. Hopefully that holds. And IIPR is not doing well either. All right, so 2 more I'll talk about. First, I'll talk about Tilray, and here's a company that's very divisive. Huge short interest. I'm in the stock. I think this one was up at $100 at one point, maybe higher than that, as the cannabis craze took off a couple years ago. Let's see if I can pull this up. Weekly. I think they did a split too, so it's hard to tell. I think they did. But anyway, here's a company. They're still on the cusp of. It's not like they're, Walmart or, a company that's been around forever and has already captured business and is growing. They're still in the early stages of growth because they have to roll out. The goal for the CEO is to have, cannabis infused beers and drinks, things like that. But all that stuff can't go through until there's approval. And ideally, you want every state in the United States to be able to offer that. And right now, that's not the case. So what they've been doing, almost in the meantime, is trying to acquire assets and scale. So when all those regulations are lifted, they can have a distribution network, and they'll have trusted brand awareness already, where you have Shock Top, which was Budweiser's beer, which they sold that asset off to Tilray. People know Shock Top, and then it could be Shock Top cannabis infused Shock Top, and they have a lot of other brand awareness names. If you're on the Northeast, Montauk Brewing, they have who else do they have on there? They acquired other brands. So anyway, you had hold on a second, sorry folks. So anyway, Kerrysdale Capital came out yesterday morning with a short on Tilray. I mean, on a short on a $2.80 stock, just pretty much saying it's worth 60 cents. They're blowing through cash. They're diluting shareholders. Companies, like all these things, and it's like they're still in the early stage of scaling out their growth. How do you think why they publicly traded companies have access to capital, and two, if you expect them to be profitable, and how are they going to scale out? You have to, you don't do it to the point you go bankrupt, but in order to get scale, you need to get money. To get the money, you use the public markets. So one of his arguments is they're blowing through cash and they're not profitable. But if you use that rationale on half of the growth stocks that are out there, or even 75% of the growth stocks that have been out there over the years, you miss out on 100% of the runs. If you're not investing in a momentum stock until it's profitable, take a look at Netflix. You can go back to 2007 and look at the gains. But if you waited for it to be a profitable company, you missed out on the majority of it. So instead of being up 5,000%, it's more than that. You're only up 150%. And you can say the same thing for Tesla and Amazon. By the time they became profitable, you missed out on the majority of the run. So how can you use that rationale to short a stock? It's even worse to short a stock. So that's Tilray. It stinks because the stock is down again today. It's under its 200-day moving average. I'm not going to add anything here yet, but at some point I will, especially if there's rumors more of this regulations being lifted. And that brings me to IIPR. IIPR was one of my top 5 stocks a while ago. I think it went all the way up to $200, but it's pretty much the only true way to play real estate space in the cannabis sector. It's very hard for, if you don't know all the regulations with cannabis, you can't go to a bank and say I'm selling pot. With all the things that have been going on, it was very hard to get money. Right? You can't get loans from banks. So on the flip side, then if you can't get loans, then you can't buy your warehouse, your greenhouse, or your storefront, things like that. And that's where IIPR comes in, and able to give them real estate space, and it's a REIT. So then they return those profits in the form of dividends. I think they're paying a 170 dividend. I think it's October. So I have to keep an eye on that, because the ex-divvy date is, I think it's October 13th. So it's going to drop $1.70, and everybody's going to wonder why it dropped at the open. But I think it's a great story. And trading down here, you're talking, was it 10% yield? Was that more than 170? If you just multiply it out, a little less than 10% yield, just to hold it. So I think it trades into mid-90s and hundreds in the coming weeks. So I'll continue to look for opportunities to play that for upside. And I think that's about it. IW, I'm here at the lows. I'm probably just going to hold the puts. I don't even know if I'll lock them in if they get to 100. I didn't even look what they are right now. It's funny, as the market's selling off, although not even up much. Intuitive Surgical is going higher, so hopefully that continues to rally. I think that's it, folks. That's all I have. Thanks for listening. I'll try and get on the audio. Probably not today, but maybe tomorrow. Let's have a great day, folks. Rock and roll.